We've taken money from people in other companies where, in the end they said that they would deliver X, Y, Z, but the truth was that they never delivered on anything but actually providing the money. So, I mean, given that, I think that the most important thing is that you can agree with the person next to you. And there are very few angels that actually contributes a lot of value, but try and find those and do your due diligence on them, because that will ultimately help you a lot if you do.
Looking at the model, what percentage of users on Spotify are premium, and does the freemium work?
So normally we don't disclose what kind of numbers we have in terms of premium and free. But the only thing I can say now is it's not double digits percentages. And we think we can get there, but we're not there yet. With a freemium model, we've always realized that the vast majority of our users will be free users, of course. And that's been all right with us, because as long as it's on a big scale, the numbers work. And what's interesting as well, to give you some stats, was something I tweeted a couple of days ago, is the fact that, we, January to July in Sweden, again, Europe's worst music market, we now account for, and this was in July we counted for 35% of all digital revenues in that country. But we also accounted for 12% of all revenues, including physical. This is quite interesting. So, coming back to that, if it's at a large scale, the numbers actually do work. So what that means for us is, if you look at a country like Sweden, we have about 1 million registered users, and the total population is about 9 million. So we obviously cover a lot of the population. And that means also that the model starts working. So with Spotify, it's really about getting the scale.
Sure. So long term, what percentage of your customers will pay for the service? Have you any idea?
I don't know, but the only thing I can say is we understand that the vast majority of them will be free users, and we're fine with that. But ultimately, I think in any freemium model, if you can get double-digit conversion rate, meaning 10% or higher, then you're doing something really well.
What about mobile subscriptions? We haven't really talked about that. I mean, you can't say what figures you don't want to say, but do you think long term, one of the Twitter questions was, after the novelty factor with mobile subscriptions, will it be enough to fund expansion, features and growth?
Yeah, we hope so. And I mean, what we've seen so far is that the uptake of subscription has definitely increased. What a lot of people don't know about the model as well is that it's too early to say. And we're growing now revenues about 50% month on month, and 50% is quite a lot. I mean, we're pretty much doubling our revenue every 2 months. So for us, it's still early days, but we're showing some promising signs. And if you look at our counterparts in the US, we're starting to become a quite sizable property. And that both in numbers of paid subscribers as well as overall advertising income as well. So, I mean, a lot of people doubt about the model, and it depends on how you look at the model. If the model is CD and you compare against CD, then yeah, it's not a very good model. But if you compare it against the fact that 95% of all downloads are illegal, and the actual monetized part is less than 5% are actually monetized, and look at the broader scale, the model is actually pretty good. And especially when we're scaling up to these numbers. And everyone that's been selling ads knows the fact that it takes some time before advertisers get used to a new medium. It takes time before media agencies start realizing, hey, this Spotify thing, is this a fad or is it going to be around? And I think we're starting to prove now that we are going to be around, and we're seeing a lot of brands that have done business with us are now rebooking their campaigns and investing again, because they're seeing great results with Spotify, and they feel that, hey, people are actually talking about it. one interesting thing, which I personally enjoy, is the fact that it's not uncommon that you can actually look at Twitter and see what people are tweeting about certain brands that they see. I especially like there's this ad that probably everyone here hates called Zootopia, and that particular ad was a guy basically recording it himself. And the response on Twitter was amazing in the sense that everyone hated the ad, but that gave him awareness. And he just started the company when he started doing the ads, and now we can live full time on the company. And he's investing more in Spotify now, doing more ads, and he actually got someone professional to record the ads, which a lot of people probably will like. But the fact was, because he did something that was novel and new and creative, people started realizing that. So even though people say, well, I don't hear any ads, the fact is you do. You might not be aware of them, but if there's a creative element to it, you start realizing, hey, how does this interact? And people click on the ads, and they do engage. They just don't engage in the traditional figures. You have to be more creative on the internet.
That's fine, but how do you think that Spotify will ever really turn the tide? If you admit yourself that 95% of music online is pirated, then will Spotify, and given what you and I were talking about earlier about young people not under the age of 18 just don't pay for it, whichever way you do it, will Spotify be the vehicle that can ever tip the tide, or are you King Canute trying to push back the water?
So I think so. And what's really interesting as well is the fact that there's been a lot of people doing surveys on people's behavior post Spotify. And it's both been done by research companies and it's been done by record labels that want to know the impact. For the record labels, it's a two-edged sword. If we're taking people from piracy and turning them into a legal environment, it's great, because it means that ultimately they'll start making money out of people that they're today, not making any money out of at all. If we're, however, taking the audience that today purchase a lot of CDs and take them into an ad-funded model only, then the model probably doesn't add up. So anyway, the surveys has all been conclusive on one point. The one point has been the fact that out of Spotify's users, 80% say that they've stopped file sharing, meaning that they no longer use piracy as a method of getting their music, which is quite interesting. And in terms of spending as well, what we're seeing is that for the vast majority of people, it hasn't affected their spending at all. They're spending just as much on CDs as they were before. They're just more careful about what they actually buy. But they buy their favorite albums and they discover new music through Spotify, which they're willing to pay for as well.
So that leads on neatly to the next question, which is about iTunes. A lot of people asked in their questions to you, how do you think you're shaping up against the competition? But am I right in saying you don't think they are actually your competition?
No, I mean, our competition is piracy. That's the one we kind of look at. And we're trying, if you kind of look at the service, a lot of it is basically done at looking at how we can make piracy better. So our competition is really, piracy, not necessarily iTunes.
Okay. What sort of content would you not have on Spotify?
Actually, we want it all. There's probably something that we don't want, but we had one example of a guy singing in his shower, but I think we actually included that one as well. So we don't really have any measurements of what we include and not. The only thing that's important is the fact that you own the copyright to what you're creating, and obviously don't upload someone else's copyright. But other than that, we're happy to take all sorts of music and formats. There's a lot of different formats. There's people uploading books now, audiobooks. They're uploading interviews. So there's a lot of different things that we're having now in the service. So we're happy to include it all.
So what will limit Spotify's future growth? Competition?